We now welcome three poets who are known for their graceful and evocative poetry that weaves telling images of everyday life. It is our pleasure to invite Manjiri Indurkar, Mody and Siddhartha Menon to read from their works. That will be the next session of today.
So we thought that we will start by reading a poem each and go into rounds. So everyone gets a little break from poetry. So this one's called Load Shedding. Ai brings back Geeta Dutt to life tonight as she admonishes her lover. Ja, 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 bewafa. In a game of Antakshari, she can never lose. Every time she pokes a needle into her stomach, her insulin resistance breaks through her skin and the cracks in her voice grow branches. In a cement tank overflowing with sand, a lonely dog sits every morning. I take his place in this night of government-supplied darkness, when I fans me with the events of yesterday, death, decay, destruction, the usual. An ant colony takes a stroll on my dress and abandons me mid-sentence. By the time we are returned to the light, our faces have been altered for the sake of belonging. I grates her fingers to fit her new body, and we follow her footsteps. And our grated fingers are turned into wall hangings with pretty tassels. I slip into the sand with ease now. My breasts have been chiseled. They gouge through palms. These hands won't close your eyes anymore. Thereafter, with our grated fingers, we return to life, with hopes of forgetting the people we once used to be.
Thank you, Manjiri. I'm Monica, just so that people who don't know us now can identify us. And it's so nice to be here. You know, we were tasked with reading poems about the personal and the spiritual, and the minute you introduce the word spiritual into the midst, one question really is, what do you even mean by that word? You know, because it can have so many meanings, and I have a feeling all of us here approach it in very different ways. And today I thought I'll focus at least the two of my poems. The first one that I'll read now and another one that I'll read later on this concept called the mother line, which comes from a Jungian analyst, Naomi Ruth Lewinsky. And she talks about the mother line as a way in which women can connect to their whole self by being in conversation with their personal, their archetypal, and their cultural lineages of foremothers. So that's the mother line. So that's what I'm going to be reading about today. This poem is called How We Emerge. For my mother's sister, oh, my sister. She is strong. He tells her, you're nothing. He slaps her. He curses her. She is proud. She can still smile, eyes saucer wide. She grows up a beautiful 24-year-old. Instead of authority, she has a broken spirit. She quavers inside. She laughs. Some man chosen to be her husband has the money, has the politics, chosen to crush her soft, vital, consecrated spirit. There, in dust, I kneel before this beautiful girl, show her pieces of my own brokenness that make my mosaic whole. Finger tucked in finger, we walk out. Others before us have made this choice, walked out. We keep walking up mountain trails where Nightingale has ripped her heart from her chest and hung it from a tree. We keep walking up to the mouth of Ganga. Our faces are raining collective waters. We draw faces of ancestresses in the waters. We are both beautiful, and life stretches ahead of us. We hold our strength inside, quiet, and when voices call us back, call for us from down there below the mountain, we continue to walk up. We have a trail to follow of grandmothers who, with their sisal sticks, carve old faces into cordons of memory. Something about our own story wakes up and turns towards us with streaming eyes. We swim in the stream, spinning double helix, tails mutating into tails, tails flicking underwater to molecular memory. We travel to the mouth that first formed, first spoke. We who tell the story still live. What is remembered lives. This body remembers. Apex of mountain looks out on trees. Sometimes we hang upon branches, bodies effortless in wind. We are the ones that scare terrors of night, guard the village, unthanked, unknown, then we rappel down, then we return to our bodies lying in the bed, dreaming. When the call comes to become the voice of ancestors, we who are hollowed fill up with hollow teeth. We are the ritual performers, not only of domesticity. Ash rolls on tongue, a pearl rolls on tongue. I curl it into a sound you recognize as ancient susurration. Mountain dreams. Mountain was growing out of me before I even learned to crawl. Its paths lit and flowing. I dream of the mountain and scoop strength into my belly, turn to live in the world, flesh and bones, spirit collected in roots, part woman, part nature, always emerging, seated on chaos, partner to form.
I just thought I'd say at the beginning how happy I am to be here, and with this panel we're all meeting for the first time, but it's lovely to be reading together. I'd like to read first from a book which was released earlier this year. It's called The Compass Bird, and most of the poems in the book are inspired in some way or take off from bird or animal life. And I'll begin, the poems are mostly very short, and I'll begin by reading a few poems from the first two sections of the book, respectively about birds and other creatures. So there's a sequence of poems about crows, which are endlessly fascinating creatures. And I'd like to read just the first and the last of the poems in the sequence. So the sequence is called Corvus, and the first poem in it is called Exemplar. No one like a crow for being yourself in public. How bland it is. It heads for food directly or stands erect on a slender branch and poops whitely in the glare of the morning sun. Anything will do and any place serves just as well, no matter who is watching. Its frown is not for others going hungry, and it does not check below when it is about to let fall. It does its thing simply. So, the last poem in this sequence is called Crow Upanishad. I'm not sure if that makes it a spiritual poem, but still. Two crows are on the highest twigs of the gnarled wood apple tree beneath your window. One is preoccupied with itself, twisting its grey neck and picking constantly, while the other looks snappily around. Would it be too much to fancy that between them on a razor's edge they span the inner and the outer? Now they have taken off. See right through the space that held them. See right into your letdown that they have quit. There are 4 or 5 peacock-based poems, and for some reason they're all a little bit irreverent, so apologies to peacock lovers. This one is called Seekers. Unlike the roving renunciates who sweep the ground before them to ensure that life will not be trampled, the peacock holds his broom behind him. Sometimes he lowers it to the ground so his footprints do not reveal his way. But there is nothing ascetic about his vaunted solitude. He has a roving eye and knows what his tail is capable of. His voice gives notice that when the time comes, he won't be denied. His old and brilliant eyes have seen enough of the world to know he need never renounce it. What he seeks is in it and seeking him. Just very quickly, a couple of poems from the second section of the book, which is about, well, other creatures. So the first poem is called The Butterfly Effect. It's in 2 parts, both very short. 1. Neck and eyeballs dance to its tune. Every pirouette above these rain-dawn bushes. Every downbeat of wings does things to the weather, so they say on the other side of a small planet. And to your attentive head, this side of a large window. 2. They do not snarl across the sky and leave contrails. This thicket gives them out as budding wanderers. They are here to fluctuate, not songs but improvisations. See the method in their flux, what it does to the earth. And the last poem I'll read for now is the final poem in this section, and it's called Brown Dog. And the poem has an epigraph from Jared Manley Hopkins' The Wreck of the Deutschland. And Hopkins was a religious poet, so that's my claim to religiosity. Brown Dog. You do not greet him, the epigraph goes, for I greet him the days I meet him, and bless when I understand. You do not greet him, and yet he stays with you on the path. When you stop to look at something, he does too, at something else. Or he wanders off to a side and you are watched by his tail. The moment you resume walking, oh so casually, so does he. Both of you have brethren who did not make it this far. They are wherever they have fallen. Heaven awaits you if you are in it together, understanding too. At length, when you turn to go back, his eyes look long and hard at yours. No, you're not certain, having come this far, that returning is the best way forward. But that is the thing you do. And he slips away.
So I do not know, but I think that crows have like a special mention in almost every mythology. So there is hardly anything more spiritual than a crow. There are meditations of death related to crow, and of course Edgar Allan Poe gave us the crow's brother. So I'll be reading two poems. And I'm not much of a spiritual person, but I mean, let's read. So this one's called Growing. I once told me if I swallowed seeds or fruits, a tree might grow inside me, and its branches might come out of my nose and my mouth. I always wondered how the seeds would survive the hostile environment. My stomach isn't like eyes. It doesn't have the tenderness and the adaptability of motherhood. If I could become a tree though, I'd be an orange tree. All my fruit memories are salty. A friend who I was once close to, out of obligation, taught me the difference between a quinoa and an orange. And I feigned understanding. She carefully peeled the quinoa, sprinkled some salt over the slices, took out 2 forks and handed me an expensive china plate that her mother had brought from Japan. When I went back home the next day, I began craving for the china and the fork. When I couldn't find either, I ate an orange, misplacing its identity, perhaps forever. In the days of summer holidays and childish bets, I was asked to eat a spoonful of salt. The future of a group of green guavas depended on my salt absorption abilities. I ate the salt, won the guavas, and lost my childhood to them. After that day, I ate everything with a pinch of salt. I take that back. Since that day, I've been eating everything with a pinch of extra salt. If a tree could grow inside me, I know it would be a guava tree. Even though I wouldn't want to smell like a guava, I would, because of all the seeds I have swallowed. It is hard to spit out the guava seeds. I would say the same thing about strawberries, but strawberries are small town aspirations. They would be served on expensive china bought in Japan. When I bought guavas, she chose the hard green ones for me. On a steel plate, she would put a spoonful of salt and unknowingly ascribe a taste and smell to my tragedies and expect me to thank her for the trouble. It's not easy to slice hard green guavas, she would say. I know. Siddhartha read a lot of bird poetry. I'm reading a lot of fruit poetry. So this one is called Beware of the Jujubes. Does it happen to you that you think of a season and you think of trees? There's a mango tree I grew old with. I think about it each time it rains. When I think of winter, I think of the marigold. Marigold, genda fool, every petal of which is a flower unto itself, bears testimony to our cruelty as children. My closest friend and I would rip apart the genda fool and devour its ovaries with the hope of gaining wisdom we were naive enough to assume lay inside the ovarian hemisphere. But it was the summer spent under the 2 jujube trees that brought me wisdom. With emmets crawling all over them, 2 jujubes, one Banarasi, one regular, were our afternoon snack, separated by a distance long enough to form a cricket pitch. On a piece of land that no one cared for, we played with reckless abandon, emmets biting into our flesh and the jujube thorns turning our feet into wall art that mothers would then decorate their houses with. Underneath the trees impossible to climb lies my discarded childhood, like the greeting card I once bought for my future lover, the words in which I cannot seem to remember anymore. Did you know, if you boil jujubes in salty water, they turn even more delicious? And if you then dry them in the sun, throw away the seeds, put them in the grinder that was a wedding gift from your father's friend because mother's friends were poor like mother, what you get is the best childhood memory a mixer grinder can offer. But too much borkut is the powdered jujube thing. Too much borkut will give you a stomachache and you will spend a lifetime recovering from it.
I also have just a small mention of fruit in the poem that I'll be reading next. This is on, right? Everybody can hear me? Okay. This poem is written in the form of a letter that I imagined my grandmother, my nani, sent me. My nani lived right before the partition of India. This is called Nani's Letter. Granddaughter, when I was 14, I crossed 14 rivers, walked to every village that fell under Big Mountain's shadow, knocking on the door of every medicine woman that knew the mountain rock as her own altar, passing a message, trick of safety, ruse to rouge, unmistakable into ordinariness. They hid their medicine in the rocks of Big Mountain. Kohe Suleiman stilled, growing graver still as it took the medicine in its safekeeping. Until, beckoned by time, signaled to return, trees were to remember, elder women to keep vigil. Women were cut down, trees passed, poison flowed, and yet soil remembers, stones remember. The medicine is yours to claim if you choose. Every woman shed blood on earth in a sigil her daughters would activate. When I crossed into your grandfather's threshold, women wailed behind me. I would continue to hear them, cameos of sundown shadows around my feet. Twilight suited me. Standing in the courtyard, I would wear crimson like a beacon, colors of the setting sun weaving rich geometric shapes around me, particles of dust lacing through pink air. No instrument was necessary to tell me to step out, to send off the day. I would light my lamp and wait for my farmer. Once, barely 2 years into our marriage, he brought me a whole panicle of mangoes. The unripe I left out for the crows. I let myself be endeared, let myself swoon into the care with which he picked and brought each fruit home. The day your grandfather brought home the dying child, I set aside my day's work. One by one, I picked out red chilies blazing in the child's eyes, placing them on a thali where they smoked. Soon, smoke drew in the entire village. People huddled at the door, tense with uncertainty, with fear. It was the visitors' eyes that first showed me the madness that would overtake our land one day. Friends would turn to enemies. Neighbors kill each other. Girls and children would be raped. Boys would have chilies thrown in their eyes. I did not sleep that night. I slept. Timelines undulated, intersected. I thought I could free my children from pain of memories. I asked their dreams to take memories away, fill their eyes, dreams embroidered with gold thread of possibility. I've always flickered between my two names, Rupa, life's intelligence made of beauty, Buddhan, wisdom growing like vine. Women continued to gather every full moon, night fire beckoning, feet slipping away from the known village. We who lived with keenness, marrow song splitting in our veins, found our drumbeat, drum dance. From one we split into three, walked in three worlds, feet tracing center of cosmos with every footfall, energy pouring from lotus skin, alighting to birth new geometries of existence. We returned with howl of morning wind, gold veins in our feet popping from our travels between dimensions, peacock feathers in eyes. When we began to forget, silence between us stretched thick and wool. We whispered to each other the secret of remembering. This was our trick, brick by brick, building again the bridge to rainbow unknowns. I dreamt of you, granddaughter. The granddaughter I would never see and come to know. I wove you a marriage chadar. I wove you a coronet of butterflies, dun colored warmth of swarm from our high desert. I danced with you. Under the stars, child, I howled for you. Howled my love for my 3 children, howled my love for my husband, howled my love for grandmothers in my blood. I sat under the page of the book you would one day write, tongue swelling with stories. I wanted you to find me, be your own vessel of truth, my love for you to deepen a groove to fit what you know you would be. Thank you. And so these poems poems that I'm reading are from my collection Bright Parallel that came out from Coppercoin Publications. This one is available outside. I wanted to read a short poem, which is, I think really living life should be about joy and pleasure in the simple things and about connecting with the elements. So this one is called Ocean Song. Announced a seal, a skib, a seraph, whose tin mouth, growing silk, ears too, announced a song of gladness, song whose eyes were beginning to open and see this winding, this shore, this walking promontory with lit hearts and lanterns and warmth and sands and streams availing. Bird suns were gliding on floor, on mirror of ocean, and glimmer was born a world that day. And a very, very short haiku, because we did have a haiku session before that where maybe some of you were there. This one is from my collection Violfin that came out from Weavers Press. It's a San Francisco-based press, and unfortunately this book is not available outside. The title of the poem is Alchemy. Inner and outer. That place where joining strides in, clear or from chaos. Thank you.
So the only long poem in this book is in the third section, and it's actually a narrative that's loosely based on the Tower of Babel story. And it's too long to read here, but I'll read the beginning in the hope that that induces you to read the rest. It's called Bird Song. It is said there was a time when birds all spoke the same language. Because they did, their status was elevated. It did not prevent their tendency to prey on one another or to squabble for nothing very much. Nonetheless, what the babblers gossiped was broadcast by the crows, and the ducks and the geese could understand the emperor penguin's cold commands. To be at one in words was their birthright and theirs alone. They noticed with pitying disdain that other fauna were not like them. Thus their ambition soared on tireless wings. It stood to reason that birdkind was entitled to build a mighty edifice on a scale never before conceived. This would seal their stature for all time. So they flocked together to plan this ultimate tribute to themselves. But straight away there was a hitch. Almost all of them were expert builders and had their own techniques. Which would be the best suited, and how was this to be determined? Materials were available in plenty, reeds and grasses, leaves, twigs, mud and such, but whose design could be scaled up without loss of strength or beauty or functionality? Some did ask the purpose the thing would serve, but their voices were lost in the babble. Competing claims were trilled and pecking orders asserted. The dream was being fragmented before it had a chance of getting off the ground, for even the owls could not decide or the condors restore order. Eventually a vote was decided on by the Conference of Birds, with only 2 of every species eligible to cast a vote. When the ballots were counted, it was found that every species had exactly 2 votes. The phoenix who was presiding rose elegantly from its ashes, urged objectivity and called for a second vote, but it produced the same result. So they decided to draw lots, and it was, as luck would have it, the weaver birds whose stick was drawn. There was some grumbling at this, but the kites and eagles glared it out of sight. This was no time to be petty, and who could deny the weaver birds' fitness to lead the task that lay ahead? Together at last in spirit and with feathers primed, the birds clamored to make a start. So that's the beginning of the story, and I won't tell you what happens afterwards. So I'd like to read you a couple of short poems. One is the title poem of a previous collection. It's called On the High Wire. And it came out of a period when I was obsessively watching YouTube videos of tightrope walkers. On the high wire. How sickening that you step out, no net, no harness, and a 50-story shiver where people squint against the night sky. There is no reversing here. To be 7 steps out or 700 is equally to be in the void with a pole whose ends are arcing gently. Here truly to say that every step counts is more than aphoristic. Do you number each sliding stride as a poet might discount syllables? When you are afraid that every word set down would cast you off this thread? The next poem is called Inner Eye, and it has as an epigraph 2 lines from the Polish poet Zbigniew Herbert, a poem called Another Look, where he says, obey the counsels of the inner eye. I cannot quite tell what you mean by the inner eye whose counsels must be obeyed. Protected from dust, from tears, and free of all expression. Is that what you have in mind? I wouldn't trade for it the outer ones, though I know they're vulnerable, short-sighted, in servitude to the naive heart, to redness and going blind. The eye of imagination only blends what it has seen, so I cannot imagine an eye that sees so differently that it surfs the rollers of death and tides us over necessity. If you mean the tenderness that stings your eyes like a sea wind, let's call it that. Who knows why it stays untouched as you make your way through briars and traffic snarls to a vacancy at the heart of disquiet. But as you watch reflections, sky and overhanging stems that ripple each other on this risen pond, strangely it is here to drive the lighthouse sweep of attentiveness. The last poem I'll read is appropriately called Last Poem. No more can a poem be the last one than a sunset can. Look at the way its metaphors cast momentary hues, so that stark boulders are softened each time they disappear. Listen to a poem's bird-like insistence, especially when the spirit clangs on unforgiving floors. Touch its hibiscus softness, graze your palms on its leprous surfaces so blood and sap commingle. Or off a granite toe-hold, pull yourself up. Make room for another to stand with you, for a shared perspective of what it means with only sky above you and landmarks small but reassuring below. Their intimations have taken you that far, but now you have left them behind on either side of a dried stream bed. Your insides holding steady in an ecstasy of wind and winter sun, a blueness as sheer as rock. Return this way before the temporary night, your tread tentative but not bewildered, and set the stream gurgling with the things you will have seen, the colors that flout the close of day as metaphors the night. Become the sunset poem. Thank you. Just like to thank the organizers of the festival for all the trouble they've taken and for inviting, I guess, all of us. So, thank you.